So the PS3 almost died this weekend, then it came back, but we're not out of the woods just yet. After that, let's talk about how Sony is done screwing around. And finally, GT7 got one of its coolest updates yet, years after it released. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. I'm sunburned as hell. I spent the weekend on Lake Michigan on the beach. I dug a big hole. It was a lot of fun. I got to play some Need for Speed Most Wanted on my Steam Deck over the weekend, so let me know what you've been playing. I was planning on picking up Mafia: The Old Country, but it looks like it's yet another Unreal Engine 5 game to come out unfinished, so maybe I'll wait for some patches even though it is a discounted game. Jumping right into the first news story here. So the PS3 store has been through its ups and downs over the past couple of years. The last time we talked about the actual store itself was when Sony announced they were taking down both the PS3 and Vita stores, and then there was a ton of backlash, like absolutely insane backlash from people, mainly because it's the only way to get PS3 games. And when you're talking about the PS3 and Vita, you can only play games from those consoles on those specific consoles. PlayStation Now is not good enough for the PS3, and there's no real way to play Vita games digitally unless you emulate them on some other device, which takes a little bit of hacking know-how, so it's not really something a lot of people are going to be able to do. So if they took away that store, those games' physical versions would just go up in price, and you really wouldn't have any real way to play PS3 or PS Vita games. And I get it, the money that it takes to keep these servers up and running for the storefronts kind of adds up over time and as time goes on, since the PS3 is like 20 years old almost. So what you normally do is you wait until the user base is small enough on those platforms where no one's really going to notice if you take down the storefronts. But when you're in Sony's shoes and there's no real other way to play games from the PS3 generation or games from the PS Vita generation, even if it's the smallest amount of people, they're going to bring in people from the outside because game preservation is a real thing. I know the Vita didn't have the greatest library in the world, but there were some standout games that never got ported, like Uncharted Golden Abyss. Wipeout got a really good game. I think it was called Wipeout 2048, but then there was DLC for it that added Wipeout Pure and Wipeout HD, which was awesome. You got a ton of extra content with that. Of course, there was Killzone Mercenary, which in my opinion is my favorite Killzone storyline that I played through. So it was also the best multiplayer on the Vita. And then there's some weird throwaway games like Resistance Burning Skies. Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified still has lobbies in other countries. So if we lost those games, they'd be basically gone forever because the prices on the physical carts would shoot up above hundreds of dollars. And realistically, who's going to pay that? You know what I'm saying? With the PS3, it wouldn't be as detrimental because there is a little bit of hope that eventually we'll see some sort of emulator or we'll get collections of these games remastered. Sony knows people want those games back specifically, and a lot more people want PS3 games back than the group of people who want Vita games back. I'm sure the Vita games group is passionate and wants those games back, but it's just going to be a lot smaller because the Vita sold like 12 million units or something, and the PS3 sold almost or over 100 million units. So it's like a pretty big gulf in between the different user bases of both those consoles. The real reason Sony wants to take these storefronts down outside of the cost of running them is that with the PS3, the store actually lets you use the web browser a little bit easier, and you can hack the PS3 easily that way. They've kind of stopped doing these security updates that block jailbreaking. They haven't totally given up, but like they're not really going as hard as they have in the past on the PS3 with the jailbreaking stuff, mainly because, you know, you can't really play PS3 games on any other device. With the Vita, the hacks are out of control. If you jailbreak your Vita, you can literally go to the PlayStation Store on your Vita and download every game from the entire catalog for free. And like, they're not really making a ton of money off the Vita sales, I would guess, but still, they're not going to be happy if they're losing that much money. So that's why they really went hard on trying to take the store down, but they did relent. That brings us to this weekend though, when the PS3 store suddenly went down. I don't think anyone went and checked the Vita, but I'd assume it also went down or was hard to access because I'm pretty sure they use similar storefronts. But yeah, the PS3 store was down for literally the entire weekend, and no one really had any idea what was going on because Sony, whenever there's an issue with the PlayStation Network or the PlayStation Store, unless it has to do with the PlayStation 5, they rarely, if ever, say anything, and they didn't say anything at all about the PlayStation Store. So people were assuming this was it. The store was done. It was finally going offline for good, probably because the Xbox 360 store went offline earlier this year, and the 360 ended up being a smaller console than the PS3, but it did have a huge user base. So if Xbox could get away with taking down the store after all their rhetoric about, you know, game preservation, making sure your games are able to be played into the future, Sony probably saw that opportunity and said, maybe we'll wait a few months and do it ourselves. So everyone was pretty upset about this over the weekend, and rightfully so. go, but then magically the store came back online. We still have no word from Sony on what actually happened. We don't know if it was a DDoS attack. We don't know if they did take it offline just to see if people would notice, and then people did notice, so they brought it back online. We don't know anything, but this just shows the lack of support for the PS3 is really hurting people who grew up with that console like I did. I can't believe it's 20 years old. I know it's an older console. It's 2 gens old at this point, but 20 just seems absolutely crazy because I remember getting it like it was yesterday. I know I'm getting older because I'm above 30, but like the PS3, those games still feel playable to me to this day. So like seeing that it's almost 20 years old and we're talking about getting rid of the store, it really just bums me out. So I hope Sony learns their lesson here and doesn't take the PS3 completely offline. I would guess we've got at least a couple of years left, but it will go offline at some point. And at that point, I hope they have some way to add PS3 games to the PS5 store, or at the very least the PlayStation 6 store. Like there is no excuse for the PlayStation 6 to not have native PS3 emulation. I don't care what their excuse is. There's just no excuse that they can use that people will accept. It is well past time to bring back the PS3 on modern consoles. But that brings me to the second news story here, which has to do with Sony's whole live service push and the Bungie situation. So Bungie, if you didn't know, is not in a good spot right now. I mean, even all the Marathon controversy aside, where they stole artwork, then they had to remake the entire game, then they delayed it, blah, blah, blah. Like that game is not shaping up very well at the current point in time. Maybe it will by the time it comes out, but we don't know when it's coming out because it was supposed to be out next month and now there's no release date on it. So it could come out, it could be canceled. I doubt it will be canceled because Sony has spent a lot of money on this on top of Bungie. But then on the Destiny side, they're bleeding players left and right. People are not thrilled with the Edge of Fate expansion that came out back in June or maybe July, I want to say. They liked the story, but the end game content really wasn't there for a lot of people. The raid was crushingly difficult. I saw people saying, hey, Bungie, we need you to show us video of you beating this world's first raid because this is the least difficulty tuned one yet. And people are just falling off because the weekly activities aren't living up to their hype after they rebuilt the entire leveling system from the game. They also laid off a huge chunk of their staff earlier this year, which is not good when you're working on a new IP alongside an old one that's really, life support for your entire business. So everyone's been kind of curious what's going to happen. Is Sony going to shut them down and just give the IP to a better studio who can actually manage it? Are they going to gut things? Are they going to reorient things and figure it out? And it looks like they're actually taking the third option. So in their new investor call, where a lot of good data was shared that I'll talk about later in the week, they talked about Bungie and they basically said, look, when we signed the agreement with Bungie to buy them, we told them that they were going to remain independent. Clearly, that has not worked out. They are not good enough at making games to run themselves independently, so we're going to fold them into PlayStation Studios, and there's 2 big reasons for that. First of all, they need a hit. Like Edge of Fate is selling decently, but it is bleeding players, which is bad, and also it's nowhere near the level of even the Final Shape, right? Like Destiny was on a really high uptick going into the Witch Queen, had its biggest moments ever with the Witch Queen, then Lightfall killed everything, like all the momentum because it was so bad. They talked about it like it was going to be their Infinity War moment. They built it up as like this huge thing, but everyone knew because they said it that it wasn't a new expansion. It was something they threw together very quickly to go in between the Final Shape and the Witch Queen when there wasn't supposed to be a third expansion in between those two. So like it wasn't that good. And ever since then, it's been on a downward spiral. So the first reason is they need to get Destiny in shape. They need to get Marathon in shape. They're clearly better at managing Bungie than Bungie is themselves. The second reason is their live service push is going horrendously. I mean, they even acknowledged it. They said it's been a struggle for them so far. And like, we can see that obviously through games like Concord, through Ben Studios' game getting canceled, through The Last of Us Online getting canceled. The one game that really took off, which was Helldivers 2, is not really their IP. They're bringing it over to Xbox. Arrowhead is moving on and doing an individual thing without Sony's support for their next game. So the one that they had take off isn't even really their game at the end of the day. So like, they need to get something figured out with Bungie to make sure that they have a live service that actually works well going into the future, because Bungie definitely cooked the books and made Destiny look a lot more successful than it was. If they didn't do that and Destiny was able to stay successful, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now, and I'd bet we'd see a lot less live service games in development from Sony because all you really need is one. But unfortunately, that's the situation we're in. So they feel like if they bring them into Sony's PlayStation Studios umbrella, they can not only help them make better games, Bungie I mean, but but they can also use Bungie's whatever expertise is left to make sure that the other games within PlayStation Studios get over the finish line. I think they might be looking at how EA is handling Battlefield 6, where they know they can't really mess up. So instead of just having DICE make it, they also got Criterion doing the vehicle stuff. They've got Motive probably doing the campaign. They've got all of their studios lending a hand, except maybe BioWare, to the Battlefield saga that's going on right now and doing really well. And they probably saw that Battlefield eclipse Call of Duty's numbers for the first time in the entire franchise with the beta over the weekend on Steam. So they're like, yeah, EA has that figured out. Maybe we can get a whole live service division going and take the best people at Bungie and have them oversee it all. And honestly, I think that's smart. Like, the smartest move obviously would not have been to buy Bungie and just moved on, because clearly something was wrong there. But now that they own Bungie, I think the two options are close them down or use the talent that's left. And I'm glad they're using the talent that's left to make sure they at least get one or two of these live service games out the door, because it's been long enough where they need to at least have one success, and Fair Games does not look like it's shaping up to be that success. So after that, the next one better hit, or we're going to have some problems going into the PS6 generation, which no one really wants. People want the single player games, the classic Sony IP, the new stuff from Sucker Punch, Naughty Dog, Insomniac, and everyone else. And the only way we're going to get that is if this Bungie initiative works out and they're able to get one of these studios to make a live service game that actually functions. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who are like, just shut them down at this point and stop wasting the time, energy, and money. And honestly, I don't really have a good argument. I'm just like a Bungie fan at heart. I love Halo. I love Destiny 2. I love Destiny 1. I played all of them extensively, and I just don't want to see that studio go away. But for the last news story, I want to talk about Gran Turismo 7, because it's very clear that they're wrapping up development on it and finally moving on to Gran Turismo 8, which I am very excited for after finally getting into this series and spending too many hours getting gold medals on all the license tests, playing around with the online, the daily challenges, which are actually weekly. I love this game. The biggest problem I have with it is that the car packs they've been doing recently are all vans and SUVs. I know that the philosophy of Gran Turismo is to take cars that you could go to the dealership and buy and put them on the racetrack. They don't want to do GT3 or anything like that, but that's created a little bit of a problem in the sense that the only new cars coming out these days seem to be SUVs, electric sedans, and like vans. So like if they want to get new cars and put them in the game, they don't really have great choices outside of a few outliers that, you know, have been in the game for a while. So, but for the final big push of its new content, they've actually created a website where you can go through all 500 plus cars in the Gran Turismo 7 library, and you can see detailed statistics. You can see charts that rank them by their class. You can see charts that rank them by their specs. You can get really granular with all these different spreadsheets, and you can see pictures of every single car. It's not even just good for Gran Turismo. It's good if you just want to look up a car really quickly and get good access to it, because I mean, Gran Turismo is not missing very many cars from the history of automobiles. Like, you can criticize them for a lot of different things, like the price of the game, the fact that it's mostly always online, X, Y, and Z, but you can't criticize the amount of cars and the amount of detail that was put into those cars in Gran Turismo 7 specifically, because it's just that damn good. Like, no other racing sim, except maybe iRacing on PC, comes anywhere close to what you're able to do in Gran Turismo, and I'll always commend them for doing that. I think it'd be cool if they worked in the scapes mode in some way, like you could upload a picture from your phone and then it could use AI to take the model from Gran Turismo and put it in the picture from your phone, because the whole idea behind scapes was if you bought your car in Gran Turismo, like the car you drive every day, you could put it in a cool place like Italy or Paris or somewhere that you couldn't realistically take that car, because Gran Turismo still understands the connection between the driver and the car. And I really appreciate that, because as time goes on, it feels like everyone is kind of losing that sense, and it really bums me out. I know this is going to make a few people mad, but my one big hope for GT8 is that it launches on PC simultaneously, with Forza Motorsport completely shitting the bed at launch and then having terrible update after terrible update, and then the studio getting gutted. There's no real in-between game between something like Forza Horizon or Need for Speed and something like iRacing other than Gran Turismo anymore. So I feel like Sony would just be dumb to not prioritize PC in some way. And the main reason for that is The wheel situation is garbage on the PlayStation 5. My Moza setup, which is amazing, I love using it on my PC, just straight up doesn't work on my PS5. I got an adapter. It works sometimes, it doesn't work others. I can't go back to the Logitech wheel. I have the G923 and it's a great starting wheel, but once you upgrade to a direct drive setup, you really can't go back. It's so much better and just a lot different, and it feels more one-to-one with driving an actual car. So it's like going from, you know, the Game Boy to the Nintendo Switch 2 and then back to the Game Boy. It's nostalgic, but it's not necessarily better. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think anyone's really going to be that upset losing Gran Turismo to PC, right? Like, it's not like losing God of War day one or the new Uncharted day one. It's Gran Turismo. It's one of Sony's biggest franchises that no one really talks about, which is why I have to put these news stories at the end of the video. But yeah, check out the website. I'll link it down in the description. You can check out any car in there, see detailed pictures of them. It's awesome, and I think it's definitely worth checking out. Anyway, guys, as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.